what's up you guys? My name is Jackie and welcome to my channel, Leisha Reads. So today I wanted to talk to you guys about some books that I don't typically talk about on this channel, and that is going to be some of my favorite memoirs of all time. So I have narrowed this list down to 5 memoirs that I absolutely love. These are some of my absolute favorite, and if you ask me if I've ever read a memoir, these are some of the first ones that pop into my head. So let's get right on into this list. First up on the list is actually going to be the first memoir that I ever read, and that is Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt. If you don't know, this memoir is about Frank McCourt. Frank McCourt is a young boy growing up in Ireland around the 1930s. Obviously, like many people in Ireland during that time period, his family is struggling very hard financially. Frank's father is a severe alcoholic, but he often delights his children with wonderful tales and adventures of old Ireland. This story about Frank's impoverished, difficult, and miserable childhood is written with eloquence, humor, and compassion. It is absolutely beautiful to read. So like I said, this is the first memoir that I ever picked up. I read it for a 10th grade English class as required reading. While it was hard to see what Frank and his siblings struggled with growing up, the way it was written is so captivating that it kept me interested the whole way through, and I did not want to put it down. So this book is really the book that cemented my love of memoirs. Since reading this book, I have picked up Frank McCourt's 2 other memoirs, which are Tis and Teacher Man. Now, I have not gotten around to reading those memoirs yet, but I look forward to doing so soon. Frank's brother Malachi wrote a memoir called A Monk Swimming, and I would absolutely love to pick that book up. I just haven't found a copy of it yet, but when I do, rest assured that I will probably pick it up and read it immediately. The next book I don't actually have a physical copy of. I got it through my library last year, and to be honest, I had no clue about this book until I heard about the movie coming out, and that is The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. Jeanette Walls had a unique childhood and upbringing. She lived like a nomad with no solid place to call home for the very beginning of her life, until one day her family finally settled down in a small mining town in West Virginia. Her father, Rex, was a truly brilliant man. When sober, he would teach his children physics, geology, and how to live fearlessly. Her mother, Rosemary, had an artist's soul, but never wanted the responsibility of raising children. Eventually, the dysfunction of this family increased to the point until the children were raising themselves, and then finally found a way out of the dysfunction. This book was completely fascinating, and I think the way Walls reflects back on her experiences and the way her parents raised her with such compassion and understanding is really mind-blowing to me. While reading this book, you can see how much her parents really affected her, but you can also see that she still loved them so deeply. And you can completely understand why she chose to rise above the chaos that surrounded her and start a new life in New York. The fact that Jeanette was able to rise up out of this difficult childhood that she had is very inspiring and proves that no matter what you come from or what you have gone through in your life, if you want to do something and you set your mind to it, you can. I highly recommend this book. I have yet to watch the movie, but the book is fantastic. The next book I have to talk about is another book similar to The Glass Castle, and that is called North of Normal by See a Sunrise Person. So this is another book that I do not have the physical copy of. I had it, and then I think I gave it to my best friend at work so she could read it. So Sia was raised in a counterculture family that decided to move off of the grid and live in the Canadian wilderness. The difference with Sia's family from most people who lived in a commune at that time is they were not trying to create a new society. They simply wanted to escape civilization altogether. They would live in teepees with no running water or electricity in these bitter cold winters, and Sia was raised to be one with the wilderness. She for most of her childhood ran around with absolutely no clothing on in the wild, just being one with nature. Unfortunately, when Sia turned 5, her mother decided to leave the wilderness and take Sia away from her grandparents. Sia's mother had gotten a new boyfriend and decided to hit the road with her boyfriend and her daughter. Unused to this world, Sia has to now try to navigate and learn her way around a world that she never had any interaction with while she was growing up. Eventually, Sia found herself longing for a normal, comfortable life, and she realized she'd have to make a very drastic change, almost as drastic as the one her grandparents made, to get her where she wanted to be. Sia ended up having an international modeling career that took her out of this hectic, chaotic life and into a more normal way of living. This book was completely fascinating and hard to imagine growing up in the world that Sia was raised, just being one with nature and not really knowing the societal norms that many of us grow up in. It was absolutely hilarious. I was laughing, it was heartbreaking, and I would cry. This book took you on a very real, authentic journey of Sia trying to find herself and a balance between this world that she was born into and the world that she chose later in life. I would highly recommend this book to anybody who has read and enjoyed The Glass Castle, or somebody who has read Educated, as it is kind of a hybrid between these two worlds, and I think you will really be interested in this book. The next book I have on my list is actually a Holocaust memoir, and that is All But My Life by Gerda Weissman-Klein. So this book is the one Holocaust memoir that no matter what, my mind will always travel back to when somebody asks me about them. This book is truly heartbreaking, as any Holocaust memoir is, but even though it is heartbreaking, Gerda has a way of looking at the world and the people that she met along the way in such a refreshing, different way from many of the memoirs I've read. She really sees the good in people along with the bad. Even though she was in these terrible, awful circumstances, she would still meet these people who, even if they were in charge of some of the horrible situations in her life, she found some reason to see good in them. And that really astounded me and has stuck with me to this day. I recently took a trip to the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C., where they actually had a video where Gerda was speaking about her experiences, and it brought all of this back to me again and how horrific her story is, but the almost happy and inspiring ending she comes to in the end, where all of these awful, hard experiences that she has went through have finally ended, and she can start her life over again and try to move forward. I highly recommend this book if you are interested in Holocaust memoirs, but obviously with the content of this book, be careful going into it. And the last of the 5 books, but certainly not the least, is Favorite Life: Escape from Polygamy by Susan Ray Schmidt. I don't even know where to start with this book. It will always stick with me in my mind, and I don't even know how I found this book. I believe I was scrolling through channels one day when I was in high school and came across an interview with Susan Ray Schmidt about her experiences. It intrigued me, so I ended up picking this book up. Basically, Susan was born into a rogue Mormon cult that practiced polygamy, and when she was a young teen, she became the 6th wife of Verlin LeBaron, who is a leader of this rogue Mormon cult, and ended up in a blood feud with his brother that claimed 24 lives. This book shows the journey of Susan while she was living with Verlin and his family, all the way up until she finally decided to escape back to the United States with all 5 of her children. I had never read a book about polygamy before, and so it was very interesting seeing this book and hearing about the life she led and all of her experiences with her sister wives. It was very interesting to me, and at the end of the day, the one thing that I will always remember from this book is the fact that Susan at the end of the book says, out of all of the years she was married to Verlin and had his children, she actually saw him the most once she left. She saw him more after she left him than the entire time they were actually married. That kind of hit me really hard, and that is why she ended up with the title The Favorite Wife. All of her sister wives believed that she was the favorite because even after she left him and took his children, he would still go visit her and his kids. After finishing this book, I did find out that her sister wife Irene actually wrote her own book, which I did end up picking up, and that is Shattered Dreams by Irene Spencer. The only reason this book is not in this list is because I wanted to try to keep it down to 5 books, so I decided I would just mention this book briefly when I talk about Favorite Wife. But this is probably my favorite of the 2 books, actually. I just really love Irene. I love her attitude and her motivation to kind of get through everything that life gave her, and her dedication. This book was so interesting, and I highly recommend any of these books if you are interested in learning a little bit more about the polygamist cults. These are very fascinating, interesting books, and I like that if you pick up these books, you don't only get the story of one wife, you end up getting 2 different stories from the same family, and it gives you more of a well-rounded picture. If it sounds like something you would be interested in, I do highly recommend these books. Those are 5 of my favorite memoirs. I could go on and on with this list, but I wanted to try to keep it down to 5. If you are interested in memoirs or trying to find some more memoirs to read, or if you are new and this is your first experience ever in this genre, I highly recommend picking up any of these 5 books. I think you will find them interesting, and I hope you enjoy them as much as I did. If you have read any of these books, or if you are interested in picking any of these books up, please leave comments down below. I love to interact with you guys. But that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to follow me on Instagram, Goodreads, and Twitter. The links are in the description below. I hope to see you guys again soon, and in the meantime, make it a great day. Bye!